Good morning, everybody. It's 9 o'clock, and 9 o'clock is with me, Father Warner. We are in the Thursday of the 25th week in Ordinary Time, and we begin a new book, Ecclesiastes. We'll just do it for 3 days. That's today, tomorrow, and the day after. And we'll try to cover the 12 chapters of this 12 book, but just to basically give you some brief highlights. Our text today is taken from chapter 1, verse 2 to 11, and I've entitled this teaching, A Preacher in Need of Prozac. For those of you who don't know Prozac, it's an antidepressant. So straight away I'm saying this was a preacher who was quite a downer, quite a guy who put everybody, or it seems, let's see how it goes, yeah? So a preacher in need of Prozac, question mark, that's how it should read. But let's read the text. Vanity of vanities, says the teacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What do people gain from all the toil at which they toil under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hurries to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north, round and round goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run into the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they continue to flow. All things are wearisome, more than one can express. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, or the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It has already been. It's been ages before us. The people of long ago are not remembered, nor will there be any remembrance of people yet to come by those who come after them. The word of the Lord. Now, the book of Ecclesiastes is one of the most unusual and perhaps one of the most also difficult books in the Bible to understand. It's usually called, as you can already see in the first 11 verses, it's called the skeptical wisdom or dissenting wisdom. As one commentator put it, it almost appears that the author is suffering from a bout of clinical depression and, as I said, is in need of some antidepressant, some Prozac. Now, a quick summary of the book would read something like this, and I'm going to do it using some of the verses across the 12 chapters. So if I were to read it, it would read something like this. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Chapter 1 verse 2. While there is a time for everything, which we will see in tomorrow's text, chapter 3 verse 1, those times are beyond our understanding. Instead of trying to ascertain the meaning of life, what the book says, it says we will do better just to seek happiness and to experience the joys of food, drink and pleasure, which are a gift of God. And you'll see this in chapter 3, in chapter 9. Furthermore, it says life has a chaotic quality, so that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill, but time and chance happen to all. Chapter 9 verse 11. And death is the inevitable end, and death is the great equalizer. The day of death is better than a day of birth, as we will see in chapter 7 verse 1. And no one has power over the day of death, as we will see in chapter 8 verse 8. Neither do the dead have any more a reward, for their memory is forgotten. Chapter 9 verse 5. With that, I've kind of summarized the entire book for you, and as I said, it's quite a book that sounds like the preacher is having a really, really bad headache. Now, see, the book seems to have a spirit of hopeless despair. It has no praise or peace. It seems to, in a way, promote rather questionable conduct when it says just enjoy life, eat, drink and make merry. And yet the teacher is not a nihilist. He is not negating the whole of life. He shows us, in a way, he'll show us the futility and the foolishness of a life lived without an eternal perspective. Like the author of Proverbs, the teacher of this book recognizes a certain reliable order that God has put in creation. There is a time and a season for everything, a text that we will see tomorrow, chapter 3, verse 1 to 8. And so the teacher of this book advocates a sense of humility, which is very closely related to the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is not translated as I'm afraid of the Lord, but the fear of the Lord means I am in awe of the Lord. It's just standing in His presence. Now, in the search for this answer, the preacher searches the depths of our human experiences, including our experiences of despair. And what he's going to do is he's going to thoroughly examine the emptiness and the futility of life lived without eternity before coming to the conclusion of the necessity of eternity. The question in Ecclesiastes isn't about the existence of God. That's not the question. The author is not an atheist, and God in this book is always there. The question is whether or not God matters, and that's what he's trying to provoke. Does God matter in our lives? Now, Ecclesiastes, like Proverbs, is classified as wisdom literature or a wisdom book. It is known in the Hebrew scriptures as Kohelet. You might see it in brackets, Ecclesiastes, in brackets, Kohelet. The word Ecclesiastes is derived from a Greek word, and I'm sure you're already finding that word familiar because we've done it several times. The word is ecclesia. The Hebrew word for Ecclesiastes is Kohelet, and Kohelet means a person who is qualified to address a public assembly. And the Greek word ecclesia means a public assembly. Now, the early church adopted the word ecclesia to speak of the church and also to speak of the believers. So, Kohelet really is the preacher who is drawing everyone from the public assembly to listen. Now, in the book, he is addressed as the teacher. Don't mix the teacher and the author as one and the same. Now, the first verse ascribes also the authorship of this book of Kohelet to the son of David, leading many to presume that the son of David obviously was Solomon, to whom the preceding book also, the book of Proverbs, is attributed. Now, although the book is traditionally ascribed to Solomon, it appears to have been written much later than Solomon's time, after Aramaic became the common language, sometime between the 6th and some even have said between the 3rd century BC. Now, the author of Ecclesiastes, as I said earlier, is presented to us as the teacher, a sage who has lived long and has in a way grown very weary of life's vicissitudes. But as I said earlier, the teacher of the book who presents these teachings and the author of the book may be two completely different people. Now, the book begins with the word vanity, Hebel or Havel, as some translations have it. Vanity of vanities, all is Hebel. Now, this verse really will set the tone for the book of Ecclesiastes. The word Hebel suggests something that's ephemeral, something fleeting, something like vapor. Actually, that would be a better translation. A wisp of smoke, a puff of wind, a mere breath, something that is there. You try to catch onto it, and when you do, it's gone. And that's the point he's making. All of life is like that. It appears to be there, but when you try to grasp it, it's gone. You may be up one day and down the other day. You're the king of the castle one day, and you're the beggar at the gate the next day. So the words Havel, this breath and this vapor, therefore captures something of the sense of this book, because what the preacher is saying, that everything is short-lived, and everything has so little substance. Now, Kohelet, this book, uses this word Habel or Havel 35 times. You'll find it. 5 times itself in verse 2. And it really is used to speak, as I said, of the meaninglessness or the absurdity of how absurd life really is. If there is one word that summarizes the message of this book, Habel, it is. Now, verses 2 to 11 of the text of today illustrates the mindlessness and the meaninglessness of life. That's what it wants to tell us, how mindless and meaningless life is. Very clearly in verse 3 we are told that people gain nothing from their toil. I mean, you think you might get something. As I said, it's there today and gone tomorrow. Generations, in verse 4 we are told, one generation comes, another generation goes. Verse 5 tells us, as the sun rises, but the sun goes down. The wind blows this direction and then it blows this in another direction. Verse 6, and then of course all the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea, we are told in verse 6 is, or in verse 7, the sea is not full. All things are full of weariness beyond uttering, as verse 8 will tell us. All things are wearisome. There is nothing new, says the author, nothing new under the sun. That line, under the sun, is going to appear several times in the 12 chapters that we read. People who died long ago, we are told in today's text, are not going to be remembered. And we cannot expect either to be remembered. That's how fatalistic the whole opening lines of the book are. However, many of us prefer perhaps to look at this, scoff and laugh, and believe otherwise. Even though we probably see the world more positively than Kohelet did, we have to acknowledge that we have experienced some of these things that he writes about in this book. We have seen good people lose, we have seen bad people win. We have tried to do good things only to have them backfire on us. We have tried hard so often in life. We have worked, as it said, we have toiled, and yet we have been horribly disappointed. We nevertheless cling to the hope that we can have a considerable amount of control over our destinies. This is how we believe our lives. We believe that we can control our destinies. But this book says it may not really be so. The knowledge that life is a whisper of smoke, is Habel, should lead us neither, as the book suggests, to therefore withdrawing from the world to asceticism and saying, what's the use of carrying on? Or should lead us to the other way of licentious and say, okay, since life is a wisp of smoke, let's do everything under the sun. It should lead us rather instead, and that's the purpose of this book, that becoming aware that life is just that Habel, that wisp of smoke, that it is there today and gone tomorrow. It should not lead us to asceticism, it should not lead us to licentiousness, it should lead us to humility and to delight, therefore, in all the gift that God gives us and to use those gifts wisely. So this book tells us the truth, if it does not tell us the whole truth. Yeah, it is this fact that makes this book so valuable. It acknowledges that the race is not always to the swift. It acknowledges that the battle is not always to the strong. It acknowledges that bread is not always given to the wise, nor riches always to men of understanding, nor favor to men of skill. But time and chance happen to all of us, as chapter 9 verse 11 will say. And therefore, it requires us to grapple with the implications of the reality that we are faced with. Very often, realities that we hope for, yet realities that do not come to us. Now, we might counter all of this by saying that the race is usually to the swift and the battle is usually to the strong. However, we must admit that exceptions to the rule occur more frequently than we would like. So, using several examples, the preacher observes that nothing seems to change very much in the seemingly unending cycle of nature. And that is what this book is going to teach us. We're going to spend 3 days doing this book. Tomorrow we're going to do chapter 3, verse 1 to 11, but most of you are familiar with chapter 3, verse 1 to 8 because of that beautiful hymn that we sing in our churches, In His Time. I'm going to tell you that the way we sing it will now change once you understand what it really means. So I do hope you will read that text in advance and prepare yourself tomorrow. Today I'd like to wish my dear friend Brendan, who's now in Bangalore with his beautiful wife Nisha and his children, a very, very happy birthday. Brendan and I were good friends when we were in the parish of Mount Carmel. So happy birthday, my friend, and God bless you and your family. And to all of you watching, thank you very much for joining me each day. We will continue this week. We will study Ecclesiastes, and next week we begin that wonderful book of Job, 42 chapters, a nice long book, and we'll do it the whole week through. So get ready. If you have the time, start reading up also on the book of Job. Bye everybody. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and to all of you who cared for us and sent us cared for our children in the Love Joy Hope Foundation run by Lenny and Nadia Suarez. I want to say thank you. God bless you and keep you well.